Hi there, welcome back to my channel. My name is Claire Holliday and I am an aspiring fantasy author. Like any good commercial seeking fantasy writer, I have been diligently listening to Brandon Sanderson's 2025 fantasy writing lecture series. I have listened to all of his lecture series, especially his 2021, multiple times, and it is amazing how the guy repurposes a lot of the same points but in different ways. It's a, sign of a brilliant teacher. That being said, one of his lecture series early on was going over the eternal plotter versus pantser, or gardener versus architect. And if you are unfamiliar with that terminology, there's the plotter camp, where you take the time to plot out what will happen in your novel. Some people will go chapter by chapter and include dialogue and character arcs and have the world already built out. And then there's pantsers, or the gardeners, which was famously termed by George R. R. Martin because he is a notorious pantser. And that means that you are flying by the seat of your pants, so you sit down and whatever happens, happens. And what generally is the case with most writers is you realize you're a little column A, you're a little column B. And Brandon Sanderson talks a lot about this in his lecture series because while he is a very famous plotter, he plots out a lot of his series, and considering how expansive his series are, it makes sense that he plots them out. But even he talks about when you sit down to write, you're going to pants aspects of it. It's a creative venture. Brandon Sanderson hits upon this point, but it just really struck a nerve with me, and I felt the need to reiterate it because this has totally been my case. When you're tackling a writing project, especially a book, because the project is so large in scope, taking some time to figure out how to get words on a blank page is really helpful. And then how do you get from a page to 300 pages? Learning what you need to get started and to complete a first draft is super important because generally a lot of these lecture series and writing courses are talking to newbies. What I have found in my experience, the plotting and the pantsing and all that takes up 10% of the total writing process, because writing, especially novel writing, fiction writing, fantasy writing, that's mostly editing. You are an editor above all else. And I think people don't like getting into that as much, thinking about that as much, listening to that as much, because that's where the real work is. It's not just finishing a book, it's going over a book again and again and literally putting hours into debating paragraphs and then maybe having to throw it all out anyway and start over. So I have been working on my fantasy book for years and it is my first book, so that definitely is a huge reason why it has taken so long. Future books won't take nearly this long for me to get through. I have rewritten this book in its entirety 3 or 4 times, and then I've written parts of it, like Act 2, 6 or 8 times, and then I've written the first chapter probably 12 to 15 times. And not just like edited it, scrapped it, started in a completely different setting, inciting incident, and that is the part of writing I think a lot of people actually don't like. It's not the plotting and pantsing and getting your first draft. Completing a first draft is incredibly impressive. Not a lot of people do it. A lot of people say they want to write a book. Very few people start. Even less people finish a first draft. And then even less people go over the first draft more than once, more than twice, and then are willing to be like, yeah, this product that I produced from putting all this time and effort into it, I'm gonna scrap the majority of it. I'm going to take out major sections. I'm going to change characters. I'm going to add characters. I'm going to add a new magic system. I'm going to reorient the setting. I'm going to add new conflict, and you can't just add conflict in the middle of the story without it affecting the third act of the story and then having to put hints about it in the first act of the story. And what do you know? You're restructuring the entire book over again. And I'm passionate because I'm yelling at myself as much as I'm yelling at you guys that the greatness of your book only comes from the work that you're willing to put into it. That will mean doing things you don't want to do, like starting over, like removing entire sections and rewriting it, like scrapping parts that you were really attached to. And you have to be willing to be honest with yourself. You have to develop the harsh editor in your mind if you are trying to make something great. I am not anti-self-publishing, might very much be a path that I end up going down, but because there are no barriers to entry, because publishing on something like Kindle can be virtually free, a lot of people think they can do the bare minimum and get Brandon Sanderson results. I am a part of a few self-publishing groups on Facebook, which I basically have had to ignore at all costs because every time they pop up, I'm just immediately angry. And not even necessarily at the people who post on these groups. A lot of it is just overexcitement and lack of education, but people will post, I've published my first book, and then receive a ton of praise for it, which to me, I'm like, we're in a self-publishing group, which means you self-publish your first book, which means there's no barrier to entry. So you're gonna have to do a lot more than just tell me that you published it. Anyone can publish it. And then that same person a week later will complain that they don't have any sales, or they've sold one copy, and they'll say that it's the Kindle algorithm that's doing them dirty. They'll say that it's because they don't have enough money for advertising, which is probably true, which is something that you should account for when you go into self-publishing, that if you don't have a traditional publishing house upfronting the cost of advertising, that you are going to have to provide the funds for advertising if you are trying to actually make money off of this sale. And more importantly, I just know from the bottom of my heart, because I will go and I will go to Kindle, I'll look at these books, I'll read the excerpt, and I'll go, you did not edit this. This is a first, maybe second draft, and your second draft, you went through and maybe caught some misspellings, and not all the time either. People want to call themselves authors, but they don't want to put in the work of authorship. But only you, the author, will ever care about that particular paragraph. So it is up to you to make it the best paragraph possible. No one else is going to do that for you, even a professional editor. So plotter, pantser, that's cool if you can figure that out and it helps you get the words on the page. But 99% of your authorship journey, if that is something you go down, is going to be editing and re-editing and re-editing. And it is tedious and it can be boring, and that is being an author. But it's worth it because the product is so awesome if you put that much effort and dedication into it. Obviously, put your thoughts down into the comments below. I love hearing from you guys. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.